Just make sure it's up and running on YouTube. All right, we're going to be streaming the West region. Just want to make sure we're up and going. We got Brett Matthew on. If you're listening, if you're watching, if you catch this later after the live stream when it's not live anymore, we have this free little team by team booklet. You can find it in the link below. It's also on Twitter, Sportfolio Kings. Yeah, so looks like we are live. I like it. I dig it. Let's get into it. So let's do this. Let's pop it up. Great. That's not what I want. You know what I want? I want this. Here we go, guys. All right, we're in the West region. Just to recap real quick. We had a seeking value Vegas expectations versus public perception. That's in the booklet, free to download, PDF style. Below that, we have experience. And these are our personal rankings Brett touched on last night's stream. Offensive aggressiveness, defensive aggressiveness, comeback potential, height. Just kind of macro view down to give you some easier insight. But tonight, we're going to kind of dig into the West. Obviously, a nice little region we got here, Brett. So just kind of give a macro view. We got Gonzaga up top, Iowa at the bottom. And there's a lot of talent in this region. I think we'll get to that well. And some teams we're still learning a little bit about. And that's what tonight's stream is for as well, is to kind of begin to see, what are the numbers telling us about what teams, at least to start. To kick it off, let's start with the number one seed across the universe.
Zaga.
Undefeated Zags. So, tell me a little bit about what I'm, Brett.
So what we have here is, again, some custom kind of observations around market outlook, the projected upside, max downside, strengths, weaknesses, just to give you kind of a broader macro view of who this team is. So we can look at Gonzaga and say the market outlook on this team is a buy. It's definitely a team that's going to be worthy of being bet on, especially when it comes to filling out your brackets and making particular bets, especially if you wanted to throw them in like parlays, especially for money line bets, which first round is probably not even going to be really worth it if there's even is such a money thing as them. But they're definitely by far kind of the best team probably in the field. The thing is again, from a trader's perspective, because the market loves them so much, there's really no value. In fact, there's probably negative value associated with them at this point. The expectations for them are probably beyond reality. So we can look at this. We look at the bottom of this. It also says Vegas odds to win championship, 35.5%. I think that's just way too high. I think it's probably 25% max. So that means, you're getting your face ripped off from a value perspective here. And we'll talk a little bit about this when we maybe go through a little bit of the actual bracket, the matchups, and we can kind of predict how we think it's going to go out. But one of the things I wanted to talk about here is, so like we have the projected upside, obviously champion. Gonzaga can definitely win the championship. And they're definitely going to be the odds on favorite to win the championship. I just think they're mispriced to the upside right now. But this is what's important, the projected max downside. So I'm going to change this because I feel strongly that the max downside for the Zags is the second round.
Ooh.
And I'll talk a little bit about that when we get through the matchups, because I think probably the second round could actually be their toughest matchup of the entire region. Strengths, so what is this team's strengths? What are they good at? Almost everything, of course. They have great depth, great scoring, great passing. One of the things I am going to update this weaknesses as well, because so the defense is average, indeed. Another thing I'm going to add here is turnover prone. So this team can get a little bit sloppy. And again, that is a considerable weakness, especially if they have a particularly bad game and they are even more turnover prone than they typically are. And we can see that actually in the key stats here. So we look at turnovers. So the league average. So just an average team, turns the ball over, 13 times. So they turn the ball over 12 times. So they're basically, kind of just a little bit around kind of league average. So by no means is it necessarily definitely a strength of theirs. And actually, I think if you looked at the standard deviation of this, it would be quite high because they've had some really bad games from a turnover perspective, where, if they didn't have an explosive offense or great leadership, that it could have compromised that game for them. So again, this has some of our favorite stats that really kind of breaks down kind of the stats that we think that are kind of the primary factors that are going to drive the outcome of a game. So you're looking at assists, the possession. So you're looking at the tempo. We have the KenPom stats. We have tempo as well. We have personal fouls, free throw percentage, rebounding percentage from an offensive and defense perspective, 3-point shots from three, how many, so what percentage of their overall shots is from three? So does this team shoot more threes than average? And then their 3-point shooting percentage as well. Then of course we have the leading KenPom stats, and then we also have a breakdown of those custom stats that we talked about yesterday, both looking at experience, the aggressiveness, the height of the team, and also the comeback potential. A possible weakness we could throw in there is, at least relative to the field, the team not big. They're not big compared to the field. So we can see the custom height rank, 56th. So they're one of the smallest teams in the entire field. So again, if they're going to play, a much bigger team, that could be a problem for them. The thing is in their region, there's not a lot of really big teams. So they've been placed pretty well. So if we look at the second Gonzaga page, again, we broke down these charts yesterday. So if you want a little bit more detailed view of it, maybe check out that video. But just to go quickly through these, the charts on the left are around what kind of spread related insights that can help drive your betting decisions. And then the totals charts on the right in green provide you with some insights to help drive your totals betting decisions. And so kind of going clockwise, starting from the top left, we have the expected margin of victory versus actual margin of victory. So what that's basically saying is, all right, the market expects the team to win by this much. How much do they actually win by? And looking at this chart, we can see the market, in the market being Vegas, Vegas has actually been pretty on target. So not a lot of value betting the Zags from a spread perspective. As we can see, kind of the black line and the blue line are almost perfectly overlapping, except for maybe just a few out of bounds jumps there.
And to add on that,
for the
Brett,
most,
real quick, is so especially if you're in a live trade Zags games through the tournament, assuming they go fairly far, probably your best bet is to wait and get a good price on them live in game. Because whatever the line is, Vegas is pretty spot on. It's actually probably, of all the charts I've seen so far, this is the one that jarringly consistent with the outcome and Vegas's line. So, I mean, your probably best bet is to live trade and get live value with a team like the Zags.
Yeah. So and again, we can see some other stats on this page that help drive this theme. So we can look at their ATS wins and losses. They're 12-12. that feeds right into this chart. We can also look at the volatility of their spread. So highlighted in red there in the bottom black chart, the spread volatility, 9.7. So you're going to have to get used to this, going to have to look through the rest of the teams, but 9.7 is actually quite low, single digits. So that's just saying, based on this team's spread, kind of what's the standard movement to the upside, what's the standard movement to the downside, and it's about 9 points. And that's another reason why we can see the margin of victory projections here. It's a relatively flat line, especially relative to some of the other teams we've seen. So we can kind of see that from just this one chart that we've seen at the top left, we can see several other data points that kind of feed into this same exact theme and drive confirmation of that theme. So again, because the more data points that you can have around a theme, the more conviction that you can have to make a bet on that theme. So to Zach's point, what this is saying is there's almost no value betting the Zags at whatever the opening or closing spread is. And it's more so if you get a deviation in the live betting markets, that's 5, 6, and ideally in that 10-point range, well, then you're getting immense value because off the 26 games that the team has played, most of a super majority of those games have been right on that expectation. So if you give yourself some wiggle room, you're going to get a plus EV bet. So looking at the next chart, the cover delta versus opponent rank, again, moving from left to right, this is the opponent rank. So the rank of the team that they're playing. And it's basically saying, well, do they cover or do they not cover based on the strength of the team that they're playing? And so what we can see here is actually when they've played worse teams, they actually don't cover. As we can see, as we move further out that opponent rank, so once you get a team that they played that's ranked 100 or 150 or 200 or 250, we can see all those dots are below the red line, which means they're not covering, which is essentially saying that when the Zags play a bad team, they're probably being overpriced and they're not meeting expectations. They take the foot off the gas at near the end of the game, or for whatever reason, they don't cover. And we can see this is almost unanimous once you get moved past the opponent rank of say 110. And even when they did cover only twice, it wasn't by much. So that's basically to say almost maybe you don't want to bet the Zags here in this first round game. Now, what we can see from this chart is if they played good competition, a top 100 opponent, then they're actually good at covering. As we can see, a ton of those dots above the red line and actually very few below the red line. In fact, those that are below the red line are right on top of it. So basically what this is saying, again, this is a great chart and I'm learning a lot even just looking at it. But when the Zags play a good team, they cover. When they play a bad team, they don't cover. Those are the risk on odds. And this chart just clearly demonstrates that. So moving to the bottom left chart, cover delta versus expected margin of victory, which is essentially, again, the spread. This is saying basically by how much do they beat the spread by. And again, consistent with a lot of our themes, we see a lot of these dots are either on top of that red line or pretty close to that red line, basically saying that they're hitting the spread almost right on target. And they're kind of like equidistant from one another, both to the top and to the bottom, and they're kind of spread out there. So again, same as what we were saying earlier, is you're going to want some deviation there from whatever the spread is if you're going to bet Gonzaga live. Again, if you can give yourself, based on this chart, if you can give yourself 10 points of wiggle room, either to the top or the bottom, you're going to get yourself a good bet.
Well, then, especially in that first game, I mean, it's very likely Zags, blast out of the gate, build a 30-point lead. Now you're going to get 10 to 15 points potentially of upside on the spread. Take that. Take the plus 38 or whatever versus Appalachian State. Because, I mean, Zags, once they're up by that much, they have nothing to play for. And so, I mean, it makes sense thematically, practically, and the numbers seem to support that. So,
And I think that is the betting insight for the Zags. The Zags are potent at covering versus top 100 teams, and are not good at covering against bottom teams.
Mm.
So I think basically it's when the Zags need to perform under a high pressure situation, they do perform, and when they don't need to perform at their very best. And again, this is also based on market expectations. Again, the market is just so hot on the Zags, and they've never been hotter than they are today. So we can probably expect to see the Zags spreads continue to be elevated. So from a betting perspective, you're going to probably want to take those points, and especially if you can get another 5 or 6 points, exactly like Zach said. If the Zags open up the game, they're up 15-3, and the spread goes from plus 28 to plus 38 or whatever, that plus 38 looks really juicy.
Hmm.
And then kind of I'll just zoom through the totals, because the totals is basically the same thing as what I just talked about from spreads. It's just totals. So the top left chart, this is just what's the expected total versus the actual total. Kind of a similar theme here is what we're seeing is the Zags totals are pretty much online with expectations, a little bit more deviation than the spread, but no wild really swings. Maybe we see one bump there, but for the most part, it's pretty close to market expectation. Again, meaning probably not a lot of value in betting Zags totals. You're going to want to bet them live when you get a deviation of 5-10 points. And what this basically says is you don't care what direction, 5 or 10 points lower, 5 or 10 points higher. There doesn't seem to be much of a bias there, since the Zags totals kind of end up collapsing onto whatever that closing number was by the end of the game. The total delta versus opponent rank. Again, same thing as the spreads. From left to right, we're looking at the opponent rank, and then by how much do they exceed the total expectation. So what we can see here is basically when they've played a worse opponent, the total does tend to go over. When they play a more elite opponent, a top 100 opponent, it looks like it's pretty even. But the deviation is higher for an over. The deviation is smaller for an under. So again, probably overall, it looks like the bias is slightly to the over, and we can look at the bottom black box here, and that confirms that observation. 14 overs, 12 unders. Again, so a moderate bias to the over, but not a ton. Total delta versus expected total. And this is basically just saying from left to right, what was the closing total line, and then by how much did they exceed that total line or not. And we can see that again, kind of consistent with the theme. The deviation is higher to the over. It's tighter for the under. So basically, you don't want to really bet the under unless you have more wiggle room on this team. If you have a little bit of wiggle room to bet the over, that's what you want to do. So if a Gonzaga game basically comes out a little bit slow and you can get 10 points of value on that total, that seems money. Because basically it's going to probably end up right around there, say, 10 to 15 points lower. So you're going to be within range of at least hedging, and the game's not going to run away from you to the under. But it looks like from this, what this says is the game can run away from you to the over.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to run away from you to the under. So that your bias would want to be to the over there.
Mm.
And then the totals projections. Again, this is just saying if this game's going to run hot, going to run cold, what's the average? What's the average Vegas expectation as well? And we can see that it's pretty tight there.
Nice. I like that. I feel like I learned a lot about the Zags just now. We can kind of just run through what we're seeing briefly with each team in this bracket before we want to dig into any kind of specific team. So just kind of go in an order. So Appalachian State plays Norfolk State. Appalachian State did a little bit of research. Obviously, they're not going to beat the Zags if they win their first game. They do have some upperclassmen, not very good at field goal percentage, not very good offensive rebounding, and they're small. I mean, we know how these stories go, and they're an average team. What they score 68 points, they give up 68 points, so they're not even good when they play back 200 teams. They're average already. Um, so not a lot to take away. I mean, I guess your real benefit here is if you want to look at the charts and compare them to Norfolk State. It's kind of where I would go with it.
Hmm.
Um, unless you've watched some App State games and Norfolk and you have a good pulse on this type of team. If you don't, I think the charts go. So we just take a quick gander. Anything that sticks out? So we've expected MOV, actual MOV. Yeah, it looks like it runs pretty tight, especially as of late. Um, Pretty close to expectations. Cover delta versus opponent rank. Haven't played too many good teams. Played a couple. Had a I don't know who they played here, but they got crushed, which makes sense. Yeah, just nothing there really. Anything?
No, I don't think we need to spend probably too much time on probably the worst
Oh,
game
here
of
we
the
go.
entire
No, this is
tournament.
see, but this is good. This total chart's pretty interesting. There's a lot of volatility here, and it makes sense because especially these lower end teams like Appalachian State. I mean, the models of Vegas put in probably minimal effort to punch out a number for these types. So you're going to get more volatility, which then even this type of team playing in Norfolk State, you're probably going to get volatility. So I'm not sure up or down, but based on Appalachian, let's compare it to Norfolk. Let's look at the total first. Yeah, also pretty good volatility earlier in the season, not as much later in the season. Um, Totals. What do we see here? Yeah, pretty much split. When it's over 150 for Norfolk State, tends to go over. So I mean, we have at least 4 or 5 data points that when the total's over 150, it goes over, which is interesting. What is the line at? Let's check that real quick. The line's at
Yes, sir.
135, 135 and a half. I want to go back up here. So Appalachian State, they live in the 135 range. Definitely have more unders to a small degree. Right in that range though, man. They love this 130, 135-ish range as far as open totals. Um, could go either way. I mean, I guess I would lean it over here if I was gonna pregame bet this. Um, yeah, interesting insights. We don't need to spend too much time. Neither of these teams are gonna get past the Zags, so it's only one round worth of information on Thursday. So let's get to the better stuff. So, Brett, I want you to tell us who is the team that you think could beat the Zags in the second, or do you rescind your bold accusation?
No, no, I don't rescind my bold accusation. Um, I think that the only team within this region that really has a strong chance of getting hot enough to take down the Zags is Oklahoma. And it just happens to be that that could happen in the second round. And obviously, this would shock everyone. But does is something shocking happening this year? Shocking.
Yes.
So you really need to think about that. I mean, I think the only thing that's shocking is the Zags are undefeated this year. I mean, that's
Yeah.
shocking. Like
Yeah.
I would say that is they're running hot. And we've seen, it's not like the Zags have just blown out like every team from start to finish.
Hmm.
There was numerous games this year where it was close at halftime, or they were running a deficit, even beyond just the BYU game at the end of the season when they were down by 10, 15 points, and they came storming back. I mean, they always have that capacity to come storming back, but the team, again, they can flirt with creating an opening for someone to take them down. I mean, first of all, I hate even talking in so much, using so many hedge words. I mean, Gonzaga can lose.
Yeah.
Like it's silly to think that Gonzaga cannot lose. This is not one of the greatest teams ever. The field is one of the weakest ever. That's why Gonzaga looks so good. But the thing is we can get what we have seen, and I think you and I can agree on this, Zach, is the teams have gotten better as the season has gone on. I think pretty much like across the entire, like Duke, Kentucky. Like I think if the season were to start over, Duke, Kentucky would make the tournament.
And to your point, you saw. I think that's what you saw in the tournaments is teams that, let's say a Georgetown, Oregon State, like even if it's some of it's fluky, even the mid majors, they actually like teams are like they only played 12 games or half their season was cut up in the middle. So they were getting better as the season went on. So we don't even know how good or bad some of these teams even really are because they're 10 games short of where they should be. So
exactly. No, that's a great point that the teams are 10 games short of where they should be. And we know under those last 10 games, teams can really start to mature. That's something that we see almost every year with a team like Kentucky. They have very high expectations. They start off slow, then they hit kind of like this trough, and then they kind of bottom out and then start to get better and better and better. And by the time the tournament rolls around, they're just starting to get hot. And a team that everyone kind of wrote them off kind of in early February, then by mid-March, they're into the third round of the tournament. And so I think basically what we're seeing is there's teams now who are just at the beginning of that kind of changing the overall character of the team and kind of solidifying kind of their chemistry. And so that's going to play out over the course of this tournament. And so the Zags can definitely lose. And I just think one of the best chances for them to lose is in the second round to Oklahoma. And of course, that's assuming Oklahoma beats Mizzou, which Mizzou, I definitely would pick Oklahoma to beat Mizzou. But Mizzou can also get hot.
Yeah.
And Oklahoma can also get cold. So one of the big Oklahoma lost in the Big 12 tournament, and they should have won. And one of the reasons was Reeves kept played hero ball. And I definitely encourage you to watch this game, Zach, as well, just to get a good gist of kind of the strengths and weaknesses of Oklahoma. And I don't know what they were doing, but again, like the dude was clearly off and cold. Nonetheless, he took the final 5 shots of the game for Oklahoma and basically killed their chances when they otherwise should have won. So it seems like that is possibly in this team's DNA that they're going to force the issue through Reeves. But so we'll see. But if Oklahoma get past Mizzou, I think Oklahoma has the best shot to take the Zags down.
Best shot, bold. I mean, well, to our macro point of this tournament, we don't see much difference between the 2 seeds and the 9 seeds. Like in a given day, even maybe 10, 11 seed. I mean, really, if there's a year where we might see a 7, 11, a 5, and a 6 if the Zags, I think it could be this year. Like you could have a Final Four that makes 0 sense. And it's going to be teams that have talent. It's not going to be Appalachian State, but maybe a mid-major mixed, because what we haven't ever really seen yet, and we saw a 16 beat a 1, so maybe we're right for it this year, is we've never seen a mid-major in the Final Four against a 7 and a 10 and a 6. Really messed up Final Four as far as ranking goes. Maybe this is the year. I don't know. But as far as ability, it seems like a lot of teams in the bracket have the ability to compete with anybody on a given night. So could
the thing is what's also what I was thinking about, just again, this is just from a broader macro perspective, but again, so we saw a lot of chaos in the major conference tournaments, but we also saw that in the smaller tournaments as well. And the thing is when you is it consistent with what I was just speaking of? Like, oh, maybe these teams really are, starting to mature, and maybe they really were justified in being the better teams of those conferences. Or was the better team in those conferences just still not ripe enough,
Mm.
and they got, they slipped up and got taken down, and now you have a lot of these, like, not even the best teams from these mid-major conferences, and they're going to get especially whacked.
Mm.
I could also kind of see something like that.
Well, to that point, I think so. Whereas
Like Mount St. Mary's is 12-10.
yeah, so I think what this year is at its core is there's one they would be a one seed probably in another year. All the other teams are basically overranked and are close together as far as like Connecticut, your Florida, your Alabama, your Arkansas, your Michigan. Like they're all in this big tier 2 pool that could be seeded from 2 to 10. Like
Mm-hmm.
those teams, but most of those teams have a ton of talent. Like in general, they are very capable of beating each other. So you may have a lot of, oh man, there's not really a lot of upsets in the first round. And then
Yeah.
boom, everything's off the table. I think, and we've seen
Mm-hmm.
that in years past, but I think that could be the case this year. But I think we'll definitely see some upsets in the first round.
Yeah.
I mean, but there are some good teams in the first round that are mid majors that I don't know if it's up to speed on them, but from what I've read and seen. But yeah, we can let's go down to the next. Anything stand out? Oklahoma's a little short. 6-4-1. They rank 60th in the tournament. I mean, they're shorter than the Zags. So I mean, again, my pushback on Oklahoma Zags is put up a great game, maybe have a shot to win it, but just don't deliver. I mean, they're as tall as the Zags, so there's no edge there. So basically, they have to beat the Zags at the Zags' own game, and that to me is tough.
And I think that's what I think they can do, though, is because they have four dudes
Yeah.
who can all score.
Okay, so you're kind of comparing them like to an Auburn of like 2 years ago that
Exactly.
can
Exactly.
really catch fire and beat anybody, but then can also lose in the first round, which is
Absolutely.
basically what almost happened.
And and they're also well coached team.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, let's go to real quick.
And also, what I think we should do
Yeah.
for the next stream actually is have an interactive bracket so we can make the selections and move through the region.
Oh yeah, maybe we'll do it tomorrow night. We'll do a live bracket as well, or maybe we do it Thursday because it's final bracket. I don't know. We'll see. But as far as the charts for Oklahoma, is there anything that sticks out? It looks like the spread line's pretty spot on overall. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Cover delta versus opponent rank. Yeah, I mean it looks like there's more downside that when there's upside, it looks like it's close when they're playing a good team. As in when Oklahoma covers, it's not by a lot. But when they don't cover, it can kind of start trending down.
Mm-hmm. Well, and two, you can look at the margin of victory projections, and again, we can use data here to basically say the qualitative statement that we just talked about 2 minutes ago. Was this can be like an Auburn team that can get hot, run through the tournament, or lose in the first round. That's what this margin of victory projection says. It says that Oklahoma's going to win by 20 or they're going to lose by 10. It's that wide of a gap. The volatility on them is quite high.
Interesting. And I think they play like that.
And we can also
too.
we can see that in the cover delta versus opponent rank as well. I mean, we got some pretty big margins there. Both to the upside and the downside.
Interesting. Totals seem to run a little hot.
Oh, I mean, well, the totals right here. I mean, you can see this is not even close to what the Zags was. There's pretty much no line that really overlaps. It's up and down. It's up and down.
That speaks to the volatility of the team. That's a good point.
It speaks to the volatility of the team for sure. So what both the spread delta and the totals delta says is Oklahoma's played a very tough schedule because they've played a lot of top 100 teams. I mean, all these dots are consolidated to the front, and that really just goes to show too. I mean, you look at the quality of opponent that Oklahoma has faced. And this is again another. It's not a or it is a criticism of the Zags, and it's not saying, well, the Zags haven't played anybody. They have as much as they can to their ability. The thing is the Zags are not grinded down. They're not put to the test every single game back to back. And this is like what we talk about like in the SEC in football, and why the SEC is like so much better than so many other conferences. Like they're playing basically bowl games every single week. And where other teams, basically they have 3 duds on their schedule 3 weeks in a row. They don't even barely have to focus on those games, and they're looking forward to their next big matchup 4 weeks from now. Kind of the same thing as with the Zags. I mean, the Zags are 20 or 30-point favorites for 2 weeks in a row. And they don't have another big game. I mean, once they get in conference, they basically play BYU, maybe St. Mary's, and those are the only games they really need to even think about. And we can see a team like Oklahoma. I mean, every game is a tough one, especially once they get in conference. And they also played a tough non-conference schedule.
Yeah. So real quick, I want to point out the total deltas are signaling to me initially that the better the team is, the more likely it is to go under. So. And I think that's probably because with a volatile team like Oklahoma, to kind of give you some context, is when you're playing a better team, typically better teams have better defenses, and thus Oklahoma's volatility kind of comes down a little bit, doesn't go on shooting rampages. So that can probably hit your lower end total by 10, 15, 20 points. And if we look at the total delta versus expected total, I mean, look at all these games that if the line was under 140, all went under. So I mean, it's interesting. No, I mean and the line's 141 with Mizzou and Oklahoma now. So I mean, if I'm leaning any way, we got to look at Mizzou's chart, but based on just Oklahoma, you'd think under is kind of ripe for the pickings. So it's kind of right at that spot.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is what this the top right chart tells me, the total delta versus opponent rank, is almost no, like whatever the closing total is on Oklahoma, it's wrong. Mm-hmm. It's either going to be way over or it's going to be way under. And there looks like there's basically like 3 games right near that total. So what this would tell me is whatever you're leaning, if you want to bet Oklahoma over or under to kick off, sell the points and get a better price, because it looks like more than likely it's not even going to come into play.
Yeah, I mean, so if you want to like 10, I mean, you're looking at what, 10? I mean, you're likely to get a 10-point swing at minimum from.
Well, I mean, and also we can look at the bottom right in the black chart here. What's the standard deviation for their totals? It's 20 points. I mean, it's wild.
Yeah. It's a lot. Okay.
And that's what another thing is that says is do not play Oklahoma totals teasers. Don't do it. No. Like 6 points is going to do nothing for you. So all you're doing is just giving the book a better opportunity, better odds. When you don't need those 6 points, it's a wash. Forget them. You're literally paying for them for no reason.
That's a good point. Good point. Now, if we look at Mizzou, let's see if we can capture. Let's just go straight to their charts. See if we can capture anything from them. Let's go backward. Let's do their totals. So we're looking at Mizzou's totals based on what we just said about Oklahoma. Let's see what we can pick out.
So I mean, their total volatility is quite high. It's close to 19.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And
the thing is what's interesting with theirs is it almost is always exactly 19, as they only have really one big outlier, and pretty much the rest of them are also within this kind of somewhat tight range of 20 points above or 20 points below.
Yeah, that's interesting. Huh.
But I would say, there are more games that they have here than Oklahoma that seem to like kind of hover
Tighter.
around that red line. But again, their volatility is also quite high. What you want to do is, you want to look at the total volatility for a team, compare it to their matchup, and that's going to give you a level of conviction around whether or not you should bet that opening total. Or whether or not a teaser or selling points make sense. So you look at Mizzou and Oklahoma, both have crazy volatility when it comes to their totals. So do not play them in a teaser. And whatever your view is, sell the points so you can get a better price because it's going to put you in a better position.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, especially go back to Oklahoma. I mean, they do have some games that have run hot when it's over 140. So we're at 141. I just want to contextualize real quick.
Mm. Yeah, the total delta versus expected total, I don't see too much signal
Yeah.
there from Mizzou.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look at it from the line perspective, but yeah, I think you're right. It's pretty even when you get over that 141.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sounds good. Let's move on to another matchup. Let's start with Creighton. It's actually an interesting one because I think I lean the underdog at this point just from my initial research. But let's talk about Creighton first. Why should we buy or sell Creighton? Let's see what we're looking at here. Anything picking up on your end, Brett, as far as good, bad, ugly?
I liked Creighton a lot more last year.
Hmm.
It's unfortunate that obviously the tournament went down the way it did. I would point out that they have definitely still an aggressive offense, but the offense is not nearly as potent as it was last year. They still have great comeback potential. We can see that they're ranked number 8. Not great height, but they shoot a lot of threes. So we can look at the percentage of shots from 3, 44%.
Ooh,
So
live or die.
half their shots are going to be taken from 3. And so that's one of the reasons why you can lose by 25 to Georgetown if you're
Mm-hmm.
not hitting
Hitting
your
your
threes,
threes.
because every other shot is going to be a 3-point shot.
Makes sense.
Um,
Makes sense. See, and real quick, just to kind of give people at home who don't have time to watch every March Madness game, or every game during the season, is if you just look at the box score, you're like, holy crap, or you just watch the game, Creighton versus Georgetown, you would assume Creighton's terrible, Georgetown's amazing, right? Like, how does this happen? Well, you have to contextualize it. And basically, what Brett just said is more or less a huge part of why that game came the way it did, which was they shoot a lot of threes and they weren't hitting their threes. So, fundamentally speaking, yeah, they got blown out. But it doesn't mean that Creighton can't win 3 games in the NCAA tournament, and it doesn't mean Georgetown's all-star team now that's going to go on a rampage. So just to contextualize, like, how does that team lose like that? Obviously, just knowing that statistic in and of itself helps contextualize that event, even if you didn't watch that event. So carry forth.
Yeah, exactly. And what we're also can see here too is Creighton is not particularly a fast team or a slow team. So we can see their possessions, 70, they average like 72 possessions. That's pretty much league average, as we can see. And we can also look at the KenPom stats to also confirm that. We look at their tempo, rank 145. So they're pretty much, right down the median of the pack. So they're not going to make the game fast. They're not going to, slow the game down. They're just kind of just an average team when it comes to speed. Another thing I want to point out here, again, this is a key factor, I feel like, in assessing these teams: free throw percentage, 64%. Puke.
Ooh.
That's terrible.
Ooh.
So 7% below league average.
Well,
Miserable.
I don't, and another reason why I don't like that is because from my viewpoint of studying basketball, just from a fundamental standpoint, is how can you shoot threes but not shoot free throws? In that, if you look at the best 3-point shooter maybe ever, Steph Curry, he's as good at free throws as he is his 3-point. So what I'm getting at is it makes me think that the 3-point shooting of Creighton is somewhat of a gimmick of a high percentage, right? So it's kind of like if you look at a football game real quick, like the Ravens, a little bit of a gimmick of an offense works really well. Oh my God, they're awesome. Well, when it doesn't work, it breaks and the whole team crumbles. I wonder if Creighton's got a
Mhm.
little bit of that kind of high upside when it works, and maybe one
Mhm.
of the worst teams when it doesn't. Just something to
Well,
think
what I think is, and I'm seeing a stat here that maybe kind of confirms it, is that Creighton's more so based on rhythm.
about.
So a free throw has nothing to do with rhythm. Obviously you can't jump and you're not moving, and that's one of the main reasons why I think there are actually some good shooters who underperform at the line, is because they're rhythm shooters, and there's no rhythm at the free throw line. And one of the stats I'm seeing, look at this. So you look at this, the assists per possession. Creighton very good at assists. So we can look at 0.22, which is about again 20% above league average, which means they're good at passing the ball, and so I think that they probably pass the ball pretty well, and can lead into a three, and especially like an in rhythm three. Is going to be especially potent. And then they are good at, not only do they take a lot of threes, but they are good at shooting threes. The thing is they're not super good. They're only just 3%. They're only 3% better than league average. So what I would probably say is the efficiency of them taking so many threes is probably not to their benefit. Um, but I mean, the rest of what I look out here too, offensive rebounding, bad at offensive rebounding. And I mean, they're not a very tall team. So they're starting tallest 6'7". So not very tall at all. Definitely one of the smaller teams in the tournament.
Well, before we get to the charts, let's mix up. Let's go to UC Santa Barbara, who they play in that first round, just to kind of see that initial stats, team A versus team B look. And I did some earlier research on them. I mean, UCSB looks very capable, just on their own volition. Um, I put they could win 2 games. Their effective field goal percentage is high, point percentage is high, free throw percentage, key variable, better than Creighton's. Um, they have a lot of experience, but also, I mean, they've played pretty decent defense, which if you saw what Creighton, I believe, was league average in defense, and obviously they're playing better offenses. Um, but if UCSB, let's see, 3-point percentage, they give up 33
League average.
league average. Okay, so it's not like there's no guarantee that Creighton's going to just have an onslaught of threes and blow UCSB out. I think that's probably why the line moved off -8.5 and now it's to -6.5. Is I think sharp money was ahead of the curve, hopped on UCSB. But I mean, this is the sweet spot real quick, and we'll get to more, is I think for your early round upsets, obviously the number doesn't necessarily matter for an upset, but to me that 5.5 to 8.5 range means that, in my opinion, those are upsettable games and Vegas knows it. But they don't want to they don't want to push it to 11 because I mean, if it's competitive at all, it's going to cover. But if Creighton wins, they probably pull away and win by 9, right? So it's kind of that sweet spot of we don't want to overextend past a key number in college basketball. And so to me, it's a signal from Vegas that an upset is on the table from their perspective. Like they are acknowledging that UCSB can win this game straight up by it not being 10.5, 11.5. They're saying it's going to be competitive because if you lose by 5 to 8, 5 to 9, that means it was competitive and the team pulled away in the end most of the time. So it's going to be a competitive game is what the line is telling us. And if it's a competitive game, well, how does UCSB stay in it? It looks like they're short. So is Creighton. Okay, similar edge. They both shoot threes pretty decently. But UCSB maybe has a slightly better defense. So I don't know. I'm intrigued by this matchup for sure. This is one of the ones that caught my eye first and foremost. And
Hmm.
the more I dig in, the more interested I am to see if there's any edge truly on UCSB.
I mean, what's catching my edge is, or my perspective is, I'm looking up the total of this game because what this is telling me is if this is too high, I definitely like the under. Because look at, I think Creighton in people's minds think that because they're good at shooting threes,
Yeah,
that they
over.
score a lot of points
Hmm.
and that they're fast. That's not the case. We
A lot
saw it
of
in the data.
oof, a
We
lot of
we look at
volatility.
US, we look at USCB, Santa Barbara.
Ooh, a lot
They're
of
one of the slowest teams. Look at their Ken Palm tempo.
oh,
Um,
you're right.
and so let's see here, 138. I would lean under, and I would circle this one that if it
Spikes early.
artificially
Mm.
starts if this artificially starts out hot
Mm.
and you can get that 145, 148, this is a game that I would definitely start leaning into.
Mm. I
Under,
like that.
under.
I like that. Pace slow. And UCSB can play some defense, get some stops. Creighton can go cold. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And again, Creighton not good at offensive
I would
rebounds,
I would
so
I
meaning
would
that they're not
say
going to get a lot of second chance points.
I would say this though. My pivot off that is it depends the context around how it's happening. If there's a lot of forced threes and or forced baskets or quick pace, like if the pace is really fast early, I think that's going to fade to Brett's point. If both teams are hitting threes because they're just so fluid and the offenses are dominating the game, I don't know if there's a pivot situation where buying the 10 points down is necessarily worth it. So it's kind of like what variable is taking precedent? Because, like you said, Brett, I think there's going to be a pursuit to get the over regardless, especially early. That line will probably get driven up if there's just like a quick 2 minutes of action.
Mm-hmm.
But to
And we can
me,
also see the aggressive from our custom stat, our
yeah,
aggressiveness. USCB or UCSB ranked 60th
mm,
from an offensive perspective in aggressiveness.
yeah,
So I mean, I'm finding more stats to suggest this should go under, um, than not. And again, especially if this game starts out hot. So, um, I'm looking. Yeah, I mean, I feel like again, Creighton bad at free throws, so that you're not going to get a lot of added points there. Um, they both have better defenses, so both these teams seem like they should actually be better known for their defenses than their offenses.
yeah. I think what I'm getting at is if you can spot in the first 5 to 7 minutes, are these defenses dictating the offenses? As in they're getting pressure. There's not wide open threes every possession type stuff, but there's a um, a push of points that drives the total up. Then yeah, I think you're right. If it's the opposite and neither team's defense can keep up with the other team's offense and 3-point shooting, then this could be one of those games for UCSB too that the total just kind of explodes 30, you know, what 20, 30 points above the closing total line. So
Mm-hmm,
it's just
mm-hmm.
to me watching for that variable is which one is happening live. Go that direction is how I would approach it personally at the moment. But yeah, sounds good. Anything else you want to add about possibility of upset here? I mean, I think this might be a popular upset, but there's a few popular quote unquote upsets. So I'm gonna say screw any public talk about that bullshit right now. Like just from a matchup standpoint, um, yeah, I think UCSB definitely has it in them, and I fear Georgetown just wrote the script on how to beat them. And especially as a rhythm team, man, when you get beat down, like there's no guarantee you're going to have that rhythm the next time you play. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Hmm.
because they really got beat. I mean, like embarrassing almost. Like,
Yeah, but the thing is what, like exactly what you're talking about is I feel like that game is in the public consciousness,
yeah,
and now that game is like defined Creighton,
right.
and this is going to be a popular upset pick. So for that reason, I don't think there's probably even a lot of value in taking USCB or UCF Santa Barbara. I was going to say Santa Barbara. Um, I would want, yeah, I want to dig more into this. Um, Again, if Creighton's going to go cold, they can lose. They've been upset
That's
as
actually
double-digit favorites multiple times this year.
that's actually a good point. Like basically to my total theme is I think the same thing applies in the spread is just watch the game. I think if UCSB's defense closing out the 3-point shooters and making it tough and has an offensive potency, then you can definitely just bet them live and bet, even if you get a slightly worse price, to me, sometimes it's more important getting the signal of what the variable is that's going to dictate the game. So that's what you're looking for. If you can get it, you'll get
Mm-hmm.
UCSB +5 anyways.
Yeah.
Or
And you wanted to call out a player on this team, right?
I did forget his name.
McLaughlin.
Lachlan. Yeah, he's a 6'4" point guard, 16 points a game, 5 assists. He started at Oregon State. He's, like I said, a fifth-year senior. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the little bit I have seen, he looks like, that's why I have them going potentially the Sweet 16, is with that kind of leadership at point guard position, being able to get his own shots, 3 points, driving, assists. I mean, that sets the stage for the whole team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And actually, you know what we should do? I think that make it even like simpler here. And again, this was a tool we flirted with releasing, and maybe we still will. Maybe we'll see how we'd want to frame it. But maybe we just pull up the tool, our dashboard, put in the matchup because we already have the matchup right there. That the boxes that have the matchup specific, so we can see the stats actually side by side. Um,
Yeah,
Especially when we're talking about specific matchups. When we're talking about upsets, I think the biggest upset here in the first weekend is definitely Ohio over Virginia.
ooh,
So,
ooh, tell me more.
again, Virginia dealing with COVID issues, obviously got bounced out of the ACC tournament. We don't even know who had COVID, or maybe it was more than one person. Maybe it
Hmm.
was multiple people. But I think that whatever the case is, the team hasn't been practicing. They've obviously been distracted. They've obviously been disappointed. There's some player that possibly might not even play in this game, might
Hmm.
not even be able to go to Indianapolis. And then Ohio also has, they played Illinois close earlier this season. Only lost by 2. In fact, we're like winning for a large part of the game, even in the final seconds of the game. Jason Preston is kind of their go-to player who can really go off, and so they have that kind of star maker who can take down a name brand team like Virginia. So I think that's kind of like one of the better kind of setups for an unexpected victory by a double digit seed. Uh, the rest, I don't, VCU could beat Oregon. I mean, Oregon is. I got to look more into VCU. I know Oregon is nothing to shake in your booties about. I mean, they can lose to anybody in this tournament in this first game. Put them up against Drake or Wichita State or UCLA, or obviously definitely UCLA, but Michigan State. Any of these first 4 teams, and I think it could be a game, much less VCU. So VCU could easily take down Oregon. Yeah, so I think I'm just looking at it. I think, yeah, so Ohio over Virginia is by far my favorite upset pick, much more so than Santa Barbara.
Hmm. What's interesting is Ohio has a super fast pace, and obviously Virginia is the slowest pace. Um,
Mhm. But teams have made Virginia. So yeah, this will be that's a good observation because I think kind of a note to take for when live betting this game is who's dictating pace because Virginia has been sped up
yes,
before
that's true.
over the course of this season. Their defense, again, Virginia has the name brand, and everyone associates a lockdown defense with them, and they still have a slow pace and a defense. Like, well, actually, I mean, let's look them up. But their defense is not as good
As
as it
years
typically
past,
has been.
yes. I
Yes.
it's if we go to the charts, expected
Yeah. So we,
total.
we, we see a defensive rank from an aggressiveness from our custom signal. It has them as the eighth best in the field. So it's a little bit ranked higher than maybe what some of these stats might imply.
Yeah, but normally they're number one or
Um,
two, like on a
true.
on a
True.
typical
Yeah. So we look at
season.
the Ken Palm defense 32nd.
Yeah, I mean that's not normal Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean every year they're in the top
Yep.
five, three.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Offensive rebounding, much worse than average.
hmm.
So that they can't get second chance points.
It's not good. Yeah, you're building your case for sure. Yeah, and actually, I mean, their totals, I mean, really are opposite. But yeah, like you said, we've seen Virginia run hot, and they have 3-point shooters, assuming they play. Um, and Ohio lacks defense. So I mean, already just out of the gate, like definitely looking over here. I mean, because and you also have to figure if this is an under, it's probably because Virginia's defense somehow shuts down Ohio. Um, but I don't think that's going to happen. So if Ohio is going to score their points, it's going to go over and they're going to cover. I think it's correlated. I think it only goes under if Virginia dominates the game. So that the
I
spread.
think that's totally right.
I mean, it's a good option to maybe correlate a parlay if you really are scared of just betting both or whatever.
No, I really like the over here because I mean Ohio's defense is not good. In fact, according to our aggressiveness, they're second to last. They have the
oh yeah,
one of the worst aggressiveness
oh
from a
yeah,
defense. So that could open up Ohio or Virginia's offense.
yeah. And then Ohio's
Um,
going to have to play catch up. They're going to be launching
mhm.
threes. They're going to up the pace. Yeah, I mean it's
Yep. And then we look at also at our offensive aggressiveness for Ohio, ranked 12th.
mm,
So again, more offensively explosive, willing to give up the
mm,
points as well.
mhm.
And we can also, we can see that here in the points and in the key stats box as well. So they score much more than league average, but they also give up more than league average. So again, both kind of moving to the upside there as well.
Okay, cool. Next up, USC. I think you said Oregon earlier, but I think were you talking about USC versus Wichita?
No, I was talking about Oregon versus VCU.
Oh, that's another bracket though, right?
No, it's in this region.
Is it?
Yeah.
Kansas? Oh, it is. Son of a douche. All right, well, let's just touch on these. Obviously, you can pull your own out of this. We don't want to take the stream too long. But so USC, Wichita State. USC was a team that I really liked for a while there, but it just seems like they're kind of a one-trick pony as well, like big and rebound, have a couple guys that can get like nice 2-point shots. But we're kind of in a 3-point world. And so that's my concern with USC. And let's see, percent of shots from three, 31%. So yeah, I mean, they don't shoot a lot of threes, so it binds them to a specific type of game flow and game script that like either they like plays right into their hands and they play well and they win the game, or like they just don't have what it takes to finish out the game. So what's your
Mm-hmm.
feeling on USC in this type of in this tournament? I mean, could they lose in the first round, second round? Could they go on a run? I feel like either I could see
I don't
happening.
think they can go. I don't think they can
Okay.
go on a run. I think they're way too inconsistent. And to your point, I mean, like that's just like even when like the thing is like Auburn a couple of years ago, they were inconsistent,
Mm-hmm.
but when they played well, they played like really well. Like no one could beat them.
Mm-hmm.
USC, when they play well, it's going to be like a close game.
Good point. Well, I think that
And if
Oregon
they play
game
bad, they're going to lose by 20.
wasn't it they played Oregon and they dominated for like the first 25 minutes, and then like Oregon came back and tied it, and like USC pulled away. But like I'm pretty sure there was a game recently where USC looked like an amazing team for like 25 minutes, and then just didn't matter. Just team
Yeah, and
came
that's
right
why
back.
I mean, again, in the future, I would love to have some spread insights, some total insights around live betting, like actual live charts or trends around how teams perform in game. That's definitely a goal, because I think that's what you would see. You would see in game volatility, not just from game to game volatility with USC. And so, if we look at the charts just on USC, I mean, we can see this. I mean, look at the expected total versus actual total. This is just, it's all over the place. It's up, it's down, it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. It's almost never at expectation.
No.
So this is just another game. Like USC, very hard to bet from a total perspective. So let's see, is there anything else in the chart here? Because basically what that first chart says is the closing total is going to be wrong. Is it going to be wrong 10 points above or 10 points below? I don't know, but it's going to be wrong. So total delta versus opponent rank. So USC played a lot of top 100 teams, but I mean, look, it's scattered all over the place. It's
Definitely.
like there's no signal there.
Yeah, it's all scattered. It's which shows they're a volatile team. You don't know what you're gonna get on a given night. Could be good, could be bad. You don't know. Yeah. So to your point, I mean, the best play has obviously been live. And I mean, is there a range of outcomes that looks tight? Like, do they, 10, 20. Let's see. Cover delta versus opponent rank for spreads. Anything there?
Let's see. So USC, Wichita State versus Drake. So I mean, we'd have to look at 2 months. So obviously, height is going to be like a massive factor in this matchup.
Oh, for both. I mean, Drake. I think Drake's the shortest team in the tournament. One of two.
So let's look at Wichita State.
I don't think
height. I mean, they don't have height either. 56, ranked 56.
Yeah,
Tallest starting player 6'8".
Yeah, I think this is a typical. It's going to sound sexy probably to people to take a Wichita State or Drake versus USC, but
yeah, this sounds like USC.
But
I mean, so we're looking at Wichita State. Wichita State defensive rebounding 5% below league average, offensive rebounding at league average. So they're going to get out rebounded. Wichita State's going to get out rebounded.
Yeah, obviously Drake as well because they're like 6 feet tall.
Let's see what else we got here.
Also, I was going to say USC in the next round. Do they have a chance? But so let's go.
Let me look at Drake real fast. Yep, custom height. I mean, the height rank. Yeah, I mean, second to lowest. You're right. They're one of the smallest teams in the league. The tallest starting player is 6'6". Oh my gosh, Drake. This would be
I mean,
yeah,
they would have to. They would just have
game to watch.
Yeah, and they're not even. Yeah, I mean, I guess they're okay from three, but
no, I mean they're a little bit better than league average. But the thing is, they don't even take a lot of threes.
Yeah. So they're going to be out of their element trying to.
I mean, they take. In fact, this is not a 3-point shooting team. I mean, they shoot 6% below league average.
Good point. So basically,
so that means so Drake is going to be shooting twos
versus
dunks. 6, 10, and 7-footers.
Yeah, and then the 7-footers are just going to be doing layups, getting their own rebound, and then doing layups again, more or less.
Yeah. So this is not an ideal upset pick here.
Not a good matchup for either of those teams versus USC. Okay, we can move on. Let's do Kansas. Touch on them real quick versus Eastern Washington. So Kansas has had some COVID issues and injuries. To McCormick, their center, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's obviously going to be the biggest key is pinning point to that because one, if they come back, are they healthy and effective? But yeah, I don't. That's the way you got to kind of gauge this game.
Yeah, I'm looking at Eastern Washington, trying to see if there's anything interesting. They're tall, so custom height rank 5th in the field, so they're going to be bigger.
Yeah,
So
bigger
if
guards. Yeah.
I guess we got to look at the status of McCormick,
Hmm.
see if he's going to play or not. If he's not, then they're going to lose some height there. So Eastern Washington could have an advantage there.
Hmm.
Um, Not really seeing much else besides that. They're good shooting at free throws. So if they can draw
Yeah.
fouls,
They shoot a lot of
they could
threes
be.
too. 40% threes. They
Yeah,
shoot
yeah.
a lot
So
of
yeah, I
them.
mean they shoot more than average, and they're better than average. So there's that component. They're good at passing the ball. So assists per possession definitely above league average.
Well, what's the line on this? This is it's minus.
Also, one of the faster teams. You look at the Ken Palm tempo, ranked 28th.
Hmm. Yeah, good point. What is Kansas tempo? We got.
So based on that, I'm leaning over so far.
Hmm. Looks like our Kansas is a little different. It's like a doubled up. Oh, I see. I see what happened on that. We'll have to fix that on V2.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So Kansas definitely is a slower team. So we can look at their possessions. It's a 70 below 71 possessions a game, so slightly slower than average. They take less threes than average. They're an average 3-point shooting percentage team. So Kansas definitely seems to be more of a slower team. So they're going to try and slow the game down.
yeah. Well, let's see this total. Is there any action?
I think at Kansas, again, we're looking at all the stats. They're pretty much league average across the board.
Yeah.
Nothing sticks out. They're like basically a percent better or something like that. Pretty
I
comparable.
mean, so far, there's a lot of potential upsets in this bracket. I think they're almost all on the table. Well, Eastern, I want to see one more thing. They have 70% of their scoring returning Eastern Washington from last year. So they're some experience coming back. They have big guards to match Kansas' big guards. Definitely seems like a matchup that's going to be tough for Kansas, especially if they have or without any of their players. So let's move on to Oregon quick before we get to the last one with Iowa. You were saying VCU thing can obviously pull this upset. I think VCU and St. Bonnie's are definitely tough teams. Um, Oregon seems not right from what I have seen this year of them. Anything that sticks out specifically with Oregon to start?
I think it's just because also Oregon is, in most people's minds, like this is not that Oregon team that we usually see. And also I think teams struggle kind of the year after following kind of the loss of kind of like a significant leader, especially at point guard, which they lost in Peyton Pritchard. And we saw the same thing with Michigan State this year with the loss of Cassius Winston. Figures that were on the team for 4+ years and really being a leader of that team, not just a leader kind of from a spiritual perspective, but also literally on the court, dictating plays and really, being, a key component in driving the success of the team, especially through adversity. Also, this Oregon team is not as fast or is not as good at shooting threes as the teams in the past. So this is a more methodical kind of team with a little bit more height maybe than usual as well.
Well, it says their height is a little short. They're starting tall.
I think they're taller than what they have been in the past when they're mostly like 4 guards.
Yeah. Well, then
And
VCU.
the custom height rank is 17. So I mean, they're definitely, in the top percentile. They're in the top 25% of the taller teams in the league.
Yeah. As far as their charts go, let's see, cover delta.
And also we can see also just last thing on the loss of Peyton Pritchard at all, because we can see the custom experience rank 45.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there are definitely a lot of and a key position, like you said. Cover delta, huh. It's pretty tight on the spread. It seems like the line is pretty dead on, pretty consistently. I think total might be where to look. Yeah, total's a little bit kind of like when you're up, I'm down. When you're up, when you're down, I'm up. It's kind of what's the expectation?
Yeah, it's like always like the market is always
like behind,
always wrong.
Yeah, it's always overreacting to the Oregon.
Yeah, that's actually a very, very interesting observation. Essentially, as we can kind of see the peak in the market expectations is when they hit their trough.
I'm trying to see if there's a line for this. Is there no line for this? Huh, not seeing one. I'm not saying it. Also, VCU by comparison, let's see, has effective field goal 51%. It's league average or NCAA average.
VCU also a lot of totals volatility for sure.
A lot of good defense. That's interesting.
Yeah. So we look at actually, this is an interesting observation. VCU looking at the total delta versus opponent rank.
Yeah.
So the top right chart. When they play a good opponent, a top 100 opponent, which Oregon is, it's clearly under, and sometimes meaningfully so.
Oh, I mean that's demonstrable. That's big. That's a heavy lift to the under. Especially the better the
and in fact, and then that we look at the total delta versus expected total. In fact, the lower the expectations are, the more they go under.
Interesting. What is this line at? I'm looking for it.
What I'm going to look for is 131.
Yeah, I want to see.
Let's see what it is.
Where's Eastern Washington? Oh, here it is.
Oh yeah.
It's 138. Wow, that's big.
Oh yeah, that's under.
Oh yeah, that's. I mean, go ahead and bet that now. I feel like.
No, yeah, that's so far we've pretty much isolated 2 bets, and this is another one. This is definitely another one.
Just played that
under 138 in Oregon VCU.
Yeah, because if we real quick just want to double check Oregon's. Okay, Oregon. Oh, I see why it's. Yeah. But and remember, I mean, Oregon plays 12, Pac-10, whatever they're called. I mean, they're not notoriously known for their defenses. So, the range of outcomes for Oregon is probably pumped up a little bit, even if it's 5, 6 points.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like.
I mean, I would still lean under here because basically when I'm looking at the total delta versus opponent rank is, again, if they're going to play, basically it says they've only basically played top 150 opponents. So yeah, they lean over for sure, but it's tighter. It's tighter to the over. It's looser to the under.
Yep. That's a good point. Yeah. It's like I wouldn't mind you take a half position on the open, and then if it drives up, take some more on the under.
The only thing I guess that would concern me and go counter to this narrative is looking at Oregon's total delta versus expected total. So we're going to look at 138. So you look at 138, and it's pretty much just
lives on the over.
only over,
But
only
that's
over.
what I was bringing up with the conference play is, um, playing a bunch of teams in the Pac-12. I feel like probably drive that up a little bit.
Hmm. So what would make this even prettier is this is the playbook on this game. Is so 138 is already we think is a little bit high, but man, if you can get even just like 6, 7, 8 points, if you can get 144, 145, that's when this starts to look real juicy. Because then when you move this, when you look at the total delta versus expected total, if you can move it over, say to 145, then it's almost all under.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, and both these teams are bottom half tempo. So I mean, what you actually want is you want a push of this total up and then take the under.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's actually like what you want to happen. Um, Sounds good. So I like that. Let's go to our last one for the night, Iowa, and we'll pick up on, I believe is it South tomorrow? North? Which one's Michigan in? South, North, West?
East.
East. We're going east. God, all the directions except the one that mattered. Um, for Iowa, obviously Iowa can score. That's what they're known for.
Yeah.
They're known for their big, slow-footed center who's very good in college and will not make it in the NBA. He's like
No.
he's like a better shooting Kelly Olynyk or something at best, in my opinion. But
No, he's super. If you don't have
Matt
a
Garza,
player
right?
who can combat him,
Yeah,
then you're in trouble.
you're in trouble because their offense will
Yeah.
fall through him, and then you just can't keep up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what they're going to do.
It's basically
probably
it's
in
basically
this
what
game.
happened. I think the two games they lost to Ohio or they beat Ohio State was just Garza couldn't be stopped, and just Ohio State couldn't keep up.
Mm-hmm. I mean, again, I think the market is generally overrated on Iowa. I mean, this is this is a crazy season. So even though I am long-term bearish on Iowa, what I will acknowledge is Iowa is placed attractively in the sense of, they have good experience. They have a good returning amount of players from last year, particularly. When they are playing good offense, they're playing really good offense.
Yeah, but it's definitely beatable. Wait, have
No,
we?
it's definitely beatable. And the thing is, it's got an Achilles heel.
Yeah.
And that's like the biggest worry there.
Well, they had a key injury though, didn't they?
Yeah, but he's back.
Okay, cool. So we know that then. Okay.
And I mean, again, this is one of the better shooting threes or teams shooting from three. I mean, they're 5% better than league average, which that's quite meaningful. And they also shoot a lot of threes, so they shoot 40% of their shots are from three.
Yeah, it's basically Garza, and then that's basically what's happening.
Mm-hmm. And again, they're a good offensive rebounding team, so they can get those second chance points. So we can see like almost 5% above league average. They don't turn the ball over. Only 9 turnovers compared to 13 at league average. So that's again meaningfully lower, 4% lower. That's a lot. They also get to the foul line. So free throws attempted, 2% above league average. So there is this is why, like, I understand why people like Iowa.
Well, and actually,
the thing is again, like, they're this what is it, David and Goliath type thing. Like, they have a very clear weakness. So if you expose that weakness, then it's over. It's over.
Yeah. Well, it actually makes me think. I mean, based on the look of the bracket, Iowa's got a pretty nice pathway to get to the Elite Eight. Like, just from who they're going to match up against. Like, I don't see a VCU or Oregon beating them. And if they got, I mean, maybe USC could play them tough, or a healthy Kansas. But, like, I guess Kansas's health is the real big one. Like, are they going to be healthy? Because other than that, I mean, do you see USC beating them? I mean, that's going to be tough. Mm-hmm. So I think Iowa's probably as one of the more easier pathways I've seen in the brackets as far as, like, getting to a certain point.
Yeah, I agree because I don't see anybody in these teams. I mean, again, if they play Kansas and McCormick is back,
Yeah.
obviously he could neutralize Garza, and that could be the issue. So I would probably pick Kansas over Iowa.
Like a
Um,
known healthy Kansas, yeah.
yeah.
They also had some COVID issue
Um,
though, so that's kind of something you gotta wait and
yeah,
see.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But no, I agree. Iowa's got a pretty clean path to the Elite Eight. And they also played Gonzaga earlier this year. And
Yeah.
we're getting crossed for most of the game. But I mean, again, if Iowa has a hot game, I mean, like their upside is nice.
They're
In
like,
fact,
yeah,
what my prediction is going to be is that actually Iowa beating Grand Canyon is going to be one of the bigger beatdowns of the
of the
opening
tournament.
round.
I like that.
Yeah.
I'd be down to bet that because I mean, you always have 3 to 5 games that are just like they win by 40.
Hmm.
Let's see. I'm trying to see what the line is if I can find it real quick. Iowa, not seeing it. Where'd you go, little Iowa? There it is. I mean, the line's actually been driven down. It's minus 16 to minus 14 and a half.
Yeah.
What are the charts saying? So if we look at real quick, Iowa margin of victory. Um, Cover delta, and they're favored by that much. Yeah, they blow out teams that they're favored by more than 14. Yeah, yeah.
What's
If it's over 12, they seem to blow teams out. Grand Canyon, they have a
I mean,
decent.
Grand Canyon, and they played no one. Strength of schedule 255. Comeback potential ranks 62nd.
And actually, I'm
Um,
kind of surprised. I mean, the line's a little opinion at 16, 14 and a half. Like, I don't know
yeah,
what's.
I think we have to look at their inside game, I guess, is what we want to look at because so the custom height rank, so they're one of the taller teams.
Yeah.
They have a 7-footer. Um, they're great at
Yeah.
rebounding. So they're 5 points above average on offensive rebounding, another
Huh.
5% above on defensive rebounding. So that's worth looking at. The thing is, they don't shoot threes,
Yeah.
and they're not good at shooting them. So that's one of the reasons why they probably don't shoot them. So this is going to be an inside matchup. So basically, I think what this line is saying is that it's maybe that Grand Canyon can provide some sort of issues for
Garza.
Garza. The thing is just height in itself is not going to defeat Garza. You have to be athletic.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
like
wonder.
even a smaller athletic person can defeat and frustrate Garza. It's not just height, it's athleticism because Garza's not athletic. He's
Yeah.
just very skilled.
Yeah. I mean, it would be nice to know if this center at 7 foot, if he's has offensive ability, because Garza can get in foul trouble. And that could potentially put this game at risk. But I mean, Iowa would.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, first of all, that's just like a broader macro theme across all games, especially when it comes to live betting. That is so crucial. Is when you have when you have a key cog like that get into foul trouble. That changes the calculus of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that's about it.
Yep.
Any last thoughts about this West bracket before we do
Mm-hmm.
the East tomorrow?
Mm-hmm. Well, just one last thing I would say, I guess, on Iowa Grand Canyon too is if Iowa does create separation, basically what our stats, especially our custom stats, says here is they're not going to come back. So aggressiveness, offensive rank 62nd, comeback potential rank 62nd. Also, we're looking at tempo.
Yeah.
One of the slowest teams in all of college basketball.
Yeah.
ranked
Yeah, so
314th.
if they're not keeping it within range, it's gonna get ugly but fast.
Yes.
It's gonna stay ugly. Yeah, that's a good point. Interesting.
And also they just don't have the fire. And again, this goes into our comeback potential custom signal is, again, so you don't have to look at all these different line items of stats to make your own conclusions. You can just look at our custom signals and say, oh, okay, gotcha. But one of the things that feeds that is you're looking at, well, how fast is this team? Can they speed the game up? Can they get second chance points? Can they get hot from three? Do they shoot a lot of threes? And the answer to almost all of those is no.
Hmm.
And we can see that across all these different stats.
Interesting.
Also another thing good to come back, again, that feeds the comeback potential is free throws. And they're worse than league average. So 69% of free throws.
Yeah.
So even if they're getting fouled, they can't score. I mean, this looks ugly.
Looks like a bloodbath. I'm surprised the line dropped then from 16 to 14. You'd think it would have been driven up to 18.
I think what I'm thinking the market's looking at is, hey, GCU's got a 7-footer, gonna give Garza problems. So I think what we want to do, Zach, is I think we want to watch some tape on Grand Canyon and see because I feel like that is the narrative on this game. Will the bigs of GCU and will GCU out rebound Iowa? So GCU out rebounds its competition. But again, its competition is ranked 255th in the league. That's their strength of schedule. So not great competition. So a 7-footer against that type of competition probably just, feasts. That is probably not going to be the case in this Iowa game. But yeah, let's watch some tape on Grand Canyon's in bigs. And if we're not impressed, I think Iowa minus the points is probably maybe one of our third bets.
I like that. I think I really like that too. Well, appreciate it. We'll be back on tomorrow night to do East region. Try to make it a little quicker than this one, but a lot to cover. And this is a lot of our first iteration looking at these charts and data ourselves, so we're digesting it kind of on the fly as well. But yeah, feel free to download the link, subscribe below. Let us know your thoughts if you have any questions. Happy to do this again tomorrow, and we have a version 2 that we're going to work on to get out before March Madness, because even if you can't utilize it for Friday's games, it'll be relevant throughout the tournament. So if you want to pull back up for future bets, whatever. Sounds good. And I'm going to sign off. Peace out, everybody.